I Will clocks in at just 1 minute and 44 seconds, making it one of the shortest tracks on the White Album, but this little acoustic gem required a whopping 67 takes to get right. All of that for a song that sounds like Paul could have knocked it out in his sleep. That alone tells you something interesting was happening in those Abbey Road sessions on September 16, 1968. The story really begins in early 1968 when the Beatles were searching for spiritual enlightenment at the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's ashram in Rishikesh, India. 4 of the world's biggest rock stars sitting cross-legged by the Ganges, trying to meditate while their minds were buzzing with new song ideas. Paul later admitted that George Harrison once got quite annoyed with him during their stay, telling him off because he was trying to think of the next album instead of focusing on meditation. Paul had the melody for I Will floating around in his head for quite some time before India, but he couldn't quite crack the lyrics. While sitting around one evening after their meditation sessions, he played it for Donovan, yes, the mellow yellow guy.
They call me Mellow Yellow, quite right.
Who tried to help him write some words. Paul later described Donovan's early lyrical attempts as inadequate moonjun stuff that didn't quite pass muster. During that marathon 67 tape recording session, something magical happened on take 19. Paul suddenly broke into a completely different song and improvised a haunting little number that would later be called Can You Take Me Back? And that wasn't planned. It was pure, spontaneous creativity flowing out of what must have been a pretty intense recording environment. During this improvisation, John Lennon can be heard saying, "Are you happy here, honey?" in the background. Turns out this was actually a quote from Simon and Garfunkel's Voices of Old People from their 1968 album Bookends.
Oh.
Are you happy here, honey? Are you happy
Oh.
living with us?
Paul immediately picked up on it and started weaving those words into his improvisation. A 28-second snippet of this accidental masterpiece ended up on the White Album, tucked between Cry Baby Cry and Revolution 9. By September of 1968, the Beatles were barely functioning as a band. Yoko Ono was now a constant presence in the studio with John, which Paul later admitted was disturbing and interfered with their work. The band members were essentially working on separate tracks and calling each other in when needed. Ringo had even quit the band temporarily during these sessions. Frustrated by the escalating tensions, George Harrison was even present during the I Will sessions, a telling sign of how fractured things had become. So when you listen to this intimate love song, you're actually hearing the product of a band that was falling apart, recorded during one of their most stressful periods. Something most people don't know about the song is that Paul didn't just sing the melody and harmony parts, he also sang the bass line. That's right, instead of playing bass guitar, McCartney created what's credited as vocal bass, essentially humming or singing the low-end foundation of the song. And Paul has been surprisingly coy about the inspiration for I Will. While he was in a relationship with Jane Asher at the time, he's gone ahead and said, "While I was involved with Jane Asher at the time, it doesn't mean the song is addressed to or about Jane." He describes it as a declaration of love. Yes, but not always to someone specific. This adds an interesting layer to the song's meaning. The lyrics seem to be about unconditional, patient love. Will I wait a lonely lifetime? If you want me to, I will. But if it's not about a specific person, what is it really about? Some fans have interpreted it as Paul's love letter to music itself, or to the unknown listeners who could discover the song years later. Despite sounding like a simple acoustic number, the song showcases some sophisticated musical craftsmanship. Paul described it as one of his favorite melodies he'd ever written, saying you just occasionally get lucky with a melody and it becomes rather complete. The song features a descending chord movement that Donovan may have influenced, keeping with the descending movements characteristic of his own melodies. And though it wasn't released as a single, it's become one of the most beloved deep cuts from the White Album in Beatles fan communities. It consistently ranks as one of Paul's greatest love songs, with many considering it superior to more famous tracks like Blackbird, and it's been covered by countless artists over the decades. The song is a perfect example of how the Beatles could create something timelessly beautiful, even as their world was falling apart. It's a song that sounds like it took 5 minutes to write, but actually represents hours of painstaking work. A love song that isn't about anyone specific, and a moment of peace captured during one of the band's most turbulent periods.